Hi you guys, welcome back to our channel. If you're new around here, my name is Amber. I'm the owner and a permanent makeup artist at Brown v. Ohio. We have two locations where we perform services and also teach students about microblading and business and all kinds of good stuff. So you have caught us in the middle of our 12 Days of Christmas training program. So if you haven't already watched the last 3 days, you can go back and watch those. You can go in any order that you want because we're just really kind of talking about 12 different topics that can help you succeed at microblading, whether it's technique related or business related. So we are, I believe, on video day 4. And today's topic is going to be something that a lot of people need help with or always work on. So we're going to talk about microblading patterns. And I'm just going to go over kind of the foundation to creating a pattern and almost like a base pattern, like a go-to for you. So I'll go ahead and just put this disclaimer out there. Everyone has a lot of opinions on patterns. Should you use them? Should you not? There's a gazillion names for them that people have made up. Personally, my preference is to follow someone's natural brow pattern, and the way that most brows grow is pretty much the same, or at least similar. Obviously, if someone has no hair, you don't have anything to go by, and everyone has different personal preferences. Sometimes clients will bring a picture or something like that, so you have to keep that in mind. I am not telling you to do this pattern all the time. It's extremely simple. It's something that you can build and expand upon, but for now, it's a baseline. And I think it should help new artists understand where the strokes go, what direction they're supposed to go in, and just some of my tips and tricks. So feel free to take from it what you wish. I hope that it helps. Basically, we're just gonna jump in. I'm gonna show you guys hands-on, just me drawing on paper, my analysis and how I break down the brows by stage. So by the end of this video, if you've been struggling with any of that, this should really help you with your patterns, and then you should be able to go off and practice and get better. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump in to the hands-on portion. Okay guys, so I'm gonna go ahead and start by just showing you the different zones and how I break down an eyebrow, so you can start to think about the brow in pieces, and that might really help you with your pattern. So I have sketched this little eyebrow here. It's really terrible, but I tried to make it really big so that you guys could see and that it was dark enough. So don't mind that. We're just gonna talk a little bit about what the zones are. So I kind of divide the brow into 3 sections, and I will show you how I do this. When you are actually practicing on practice skin or on whatever, you can kind of do the same thing. So it's roughly about this. So we have 1, 2, and 3. In fact, I'll write that up here. So the first small section here is zone 1. This middle section is going to be zone 2. And then we have zone 3 here in the tail. So the zones are important because the hair strokes in each zone kind of have a common characteristic. So in zone 1, these are your beginning strokes at the front of your eyebrow. These kind of go in an upright motion. So whenever you're working in zone 1, I want you to think about the straight up and down motion. And then when we're working in zone 2, these have more of like a rainbow or a sideways motion. So they're kind of doing like that. And then when we're working in zone 3, which is the tail, these all kind of have a common motion, which is going to be kind of coming down. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is show you a little bit about how this helps you here. So when you're working in zone 1, there are a couple rules that you need to remember. All of the strokes in zone 1 touch the bottom and top border. So I'll show you what that looks like. We're starting at the bottom and we kind of pull towards the top. Notice that I'm not making super straight up and down strokes. They're kind of upright, but kind of curving inward towards the tail. Okay, so really zone 1's the smallest. You're only gonna get a few hairs in that section that are going upright because that's typically how natural hair is. So after you get out of zone 1, really 4, 5, 6 strokes to get us started, we're gonna go on to zone 2. I will pause really quick to just point out something really important. You do need to make sure that you touch the top and the bottom edges, and you want to secure this outline. From a practical standpoint, when you're really working, this outline is pencil. And when you wipe it off and you're getting done with your session, you're not going to have that anymore. So if you are not touching the lines and you're making strokes kind of like this, your outline is going to be completely lost. So we want to make sure that you're touching the bottom and the top in zone 1. Okay, and then zone 2, we're gonna start to make these range, go in a sideways motion. So we're gonna actually be touching the bottom and the top separately. So what I want you to remember about zone 2 is you no longer touch, no stroke touches the bottom and the top anymore. That's super important. You don't wanna continue this motion all the way down the brow or it's gonna look really unnatural. So one thing you're gonna notice while I'm showing you guys this is there are gonna be moments where I tilt the paper. Don't forget you can do that when you're practicing because on a real person you would tilt their head or move your body. So in zone 2 we start on the bottom and we're gonna work our way towards the middle. Again, not touching the top anymore, we're working our way towards the middle. And these are starting to look a little more like a rainbow, kind of like this motion. They're no longer going straight up and down. Okay, now we have to do something about this top line. So remember, we're not going bottom all the way to the top, so what do we do at the top line? We're now gonna start our strokes top to middle. It's very weird drawing this the right side up. I'm so used to drawing upside down. Okay, cool. So we have this kind of funky little transition area right here. How do you go from zone 1 to zone 2 seamlessly? I'm gonna come back to that in a second. But you've laid your foundation. That's what's important on this first pass. So now we have to work in zone 3. Remember, these are coming now in like a downward motion. So you kind of saw me start doing that here. These are coming top to middle. Just like zone 2, we're no longer touching the top and the bottom. And then I'm gonna do the bottom here. And these are going bottom to middle. Notice when I get to like this skinny tail, I'm kind of running out of room. Sometimes at the end of zone 3, you can trace your outline. Okay, so this is okay. Mind you, I'm doing this with marker, so you guys are gonna be able to do it a lot more neatly with pencil or with practice skin and a needle. But this is your baseline. So on your pass 2, when you're drawing, you can go in and fill and make it look more natural. More so just want you to think about this pattern and this being like your baseline. So first I wanna revisit this transition area, which everyone kind of struggles with. There are several ways you can kind of work on this. I wanna just point out that it's a next level skill. It's not something that you have to master when you're first practicing drawing. It's something that you can do once you get the motion down. So these here, you're gonna have a few that kind of just float. They don't follow any of the rules of the zones. So one of the ways you can smooth this out is by taking one from the bottom and just not touching anything. You can also take one here and float it towards the top. And then you can kind of have some that almost don't touch anything. And then you can start filling it more. And all of a sudden this starts to become a more seamless eyebrow. So on your second pass through, on practice skin, on paper, you can start filling things a little bit more. And that's where maybe you'll be a little more creative. I always think about this section being like the second pass being where I can relax. So the foundation's already here. Now you can just follow along. Always still following the rules, but you've already laid the foundation, so you don't have to guess anymore. You can just start filling them more. By the way, don't recommend practicing with marker. It's a lot more complicated. Oops. It's a lot harder to draw with because it's so thick. All right, so this is just an example of how things should go. You're gonna become a perfectionist if you're not already like me, and you could do this for hours, but this is like our baseline starting point. So zone 1, just to recap, these are gonna go in an upward motion, and they touch the bottom and the top. Zone 2 go in like a sideways, almost rainbowy motion, and the bottom goes to the middle, the top goes to the middle. And then zone 3, all of our strokes are coming in a downward motion. So top to middle, bottom to middle. So that's it for the zone section. I'm gonna show you some common mistakes and some no-nos and things to avoid. And then, yeah, we'll close our video. Okay, so now that we've gone over the zones and the directions that they go in, I wanna show you a couple of things that I see with new artists or people who are still kind of learning. Several things that you shouldn't do. They kind of happen naturally, and it's something that you have to work against. So the first one being in zone 1, one of the most common things that I see people that are learning do is they make their strokes super straight. It's almost hard for me to do. The reason you don't want to do this is that it just looks very unnatural. It's not lifelike, and real hair doesn't grow straight up and down like that. So you want to try to practice curving your strokes to give them a little life. I also find that this happens when people are super rigid, and you can create more curvature when you're more relaxed. So let's move on to zone 2. The biggest mistake or issue that I see in zone 2 is super short strokes. So instead of like elongating them and making them look more free and natural, I see a lot of people doing stuff like this. And real hair just simply doesn't grow like that, so you want to try to avoid that. That ends up looking very unnatural. And then lastly, one of the bigger mistakes, and really the only one that can actually harm the skin or create a huge issue with results, is crisscrossing your strokes. And that usually happens in zone 3 because you're trying to close this tiny space. So you never ever really want to crisscross your strokes. One, it's not attractive, so it doesn't look natural, it looks really weird, but every time you intersect here, you're creating a lot of trauma where there's no longer a fine line, it's almost like a hole or an opening. When this heals, it will blow out and look really blurry. So that's why you want to avoid doing that. They can get really close and almost touch each other, but they cannot cross. Okay, so those are our common mistakes. This is my breakdown of a brow and how it should go. I hope that this helps you guys as you're kind of creating your outlines and going through your patterns. And if you have any questions, you can drop them below in the comments. Just remember to like and subscribe so you can see more of our videos. And then I look forward to talking to you guys tomorrow for video number 5. Thanks, guys.